I remember one chef called me and was like, hey, Tom, can you double the number of potato rosemary sourdough you can do? I'm kind of the business guy. I'm just getting my head around baking. I'm thinking this is like an obvious one. So I go down, I told the guys, can we, double that? They're like, no way. I was like, are you kidding me? Because it's going to stress the mother dough. When I came in and I saw Gail with these 35 highly skilled bakers, I wanted to talk, right? But then I told myself to shut up. So you look at competitive landscape, footfall, access to transport, demographics. You just keep on feeding a model, and the model can tell you this might work. That's 50% of the answer. Now let's go to that neighborhood and you start asking questions.
That's the art.
Yeah, when we first look at a site, first thing that we do is we go, what's gone on here in the past? And what's going on today? And they always have amazing stories. I'm not gonna design a site until you tell me what went in this neighborhood and how are we gonna reflect that in our new site.
Tom, thank you so much for doing this. Incredibly grateful. What I would love to start with is skateboarding and slaying monsters, which is kind of maybe an interesting place to start.
Okay.
So Wilf, our friend, Wilfie Wonka from Islands Chocolate, he said the first time he met you, you'd rocked up on a skateboard, super relaxed, and I think skateboarding is interesting because I used to skateboard when I was to not great standards, to be brutally honest. But I think
you're no Tony Hawk.
Yeah, no Tony Hawk. Yeah, exactly. But I think, and then I read some of that you skateboard to work.
Yep.
I think it's a really interesting thing to do is to skateboard.
Yep.
So I would love to know what has been, other than COVID, because I don't want to use the C word today, but other than COVID, what's been the biggest monster or challenge you faced on this, I think it's 40 years journey. And how do you think, quite esoteric here, but how do you think skateboarding helps you solve that problem?
Wow, good one. Good one. Well, when I think about skateboarding, I think about it, there's kind of...
Yeah, just come a little bit closer, mate. Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I think of skateboarding, I think probably of two things. I mean, one is, when you're in the sink, you're going, it feels like you're in the flow, much like you're surfing. And I think it's hugely important, like in a business when you're growing it or, this bakery, it's like to be in the flow of what's happening, and I think that's one aspect of surfing that I think applies to kind of the challenges is just stay in the flow. And for me, the flow is the baker, right? It's like, we have to tap in. What I found when I first met Gail, like 25 years ago now, is, an immensely dedicated group of, a small group of bakers. And I fell in love with their ethos and their perspective on the world, which was like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to make something world-class every day. I'm going to go give it to somebody, and then I'm going to come back the next day, and I'll do it that well or better. And I thought, shit, that is an amazing, just pattern, flow to get into. And, as you talk to them a little bit more, you see how, difficult it is and how, the small little bits and the change every day, and you have to adjust. So it's not just doing the same thing. It's just it's taking your skill, the same skill, and applying it to all the different things that change that next day, and somehow coming up with something better than that. So to get the whole business to be a challenge, if that's the thing I loved, like how do you get a bunch of people to, more people to think that way? And the big problem is what happens when you get somebody who thinks that they're a hot shot, like salesperson, right? Or, a hot shot, manager, or business person, and get them to just calm down, listen to the guys that know what they're doing and kind of get into their flow.
The flow of, it's almost like they're pulling this back to the analogy of the skateboard, like the flow of the skateboard and the flow of the baking. I love that. And also, I suppose you say if it's a hotshot salesperson is potentially, when your trucks are kind of rusty, it begins to take you out of that flow.
Doing all the tricks and
all the tricks,
all that stuff. And you're like, that's cool, but are you can you just also just get into the flow of something, because that's a different aspect of skateboarding, and that's a different activity.
And so where do you skateboard from then? What's the commute in?
Well, it depends. I mean, if I'm going into the city, into some to a meeting or going to a Gail's, or flitting between Gail's, skateboard's often just the best way, because I can step up to the front, and pop up and then have a chat. If I'm on my bike, which is the other alternative, I've got to lock it, or I got to fold it if it's by Brompton. And it's just
can you do
one
that?
more effort that I don't want to do.
Can you do that thing? I can imagine do that thing that, as you say, like the skaters in the States probably do. Where they walk in and they they pop the board and it's sort of
they ollie up.
Sick. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm a slightly different generation than those guys. Yeah.
The and in terms of the slaying the monster, like what has been the sort of the hardest challenge? And I definitely agree, like getting into some form of flow state helps you sort of, a la Bruce Lee, be like water. That quote, which is like, when you're in that flow state, and sometimes you get really clunky, but like, what has been that egregious monster you've been facing on this journey?
Yeah, but I think it's just, people who want to disrupt the flow. Maybe that's the monster. That's what I'm kind of getting at. It's like, hey, we already have a template, for how to, how to be a bakery, how to do something great, right? And let's just build on that. And that, and so it's like it's slaying this kind of this the monster is basically people kind of saying, no, I know how to do it, and trying to radically change the course of something that doesn't need to be had. So if you have a group, imagine you start with the seed of an amazing food pioneer, which is Gail, and a group of people who are amazing craftspeople.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, what do you do with that thing, right? What's I guess typically people might grow like a food business and then just keep on adding more business to it. And I'm saying, slay that monster. That's
when you say add more business to it.
Stop thinking about the food and start. What the monster in the room is that people basically say, look, as you grow like a bakery or a food business, that it has to become more businessy, right? It has to become more. It's more about engineering and operations and business principles and business decisions. And I say a food business should be making food decisions, right? It should be led by food people, right? You don't really want. It's this thing that everybody wants to grab something that's growing and then change it rather than to build on what made it great in the first place.
I love that. I think there's the 1% improve. I don't know. I was speaking to this about. It was Rick Stein's son, Jack Stein, down in Cornwall, and he was talking about this vanilla sea bass dish, right?
Yeah.
And each time Rick had gone away, and each time. He had an original dish, which is a bit like you with the bakers. It's like, this is what tastes good. And then each new chef they brought in was like, right, I'm going to add my little thing to it. It's that person. They're out of the flow. And the issue is that because it's so so slow, you can't actually see that the 1% improvement is actually pulling you to something completely different.
Okay.
And then Rick comes back and looks at the dish and was like, what the fuck is this? This is not what we'd created. And then Jack's like, oh my God, it's been like 9 months because he lives in Australia.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, we didn't even, because we were so in the weeds. And that's that. And I suppose putting this into Gail's, it's like the difference between food decisions and business decisions. Business decisions are slowly pull you away from food, but because it's slow and incremental, you can't actually see it.
Yeah, it can happen that way. I mean, look, I think society kind of rewards the person that goes in kind of with a lot of self-confidence and then, changes things pretty quickly. They see that something needs to get better and they change it.
Yeah. Rather
than rewarding the person that goes in and tries to understand something deeply, right? And then make it better. And I think this is a whole different mindset. And, so for me, the big monster out there is this mindset that you have to, you're in there to, to change it before you know it. Right?
Change it before you know it. Wow.
To not understand a baker before you try to change kind of the ingredients that the baker might have or where you might sell it to or how the whole system works. And I think that's a huge failure. If you're going to run a craft business, right? Everybody has to first get in the mind of a baker, right? Yeah. And then say, and be serving that ethos. And then from that ethos, okay, you can play jazz. You can take it this way, take it that way. But you can't do that here until you put in the time, for me, understanding what the ethos of the baker is. And that is that's a monster that you slay all the time. You just have to keep vigilant, say, I'm not letting that in, because sometimes it's very tempting. You say, oh shit, that's a really good idea,
So give an example,
but it's not connected.
Give an example of
I always get people doing something like celebration cakes. They're like, look, you're bakers, you do this, you got all this stuff, you got all this connections to customers, and everybody has a birthday, and everybody has celebrations, and they keep on asking for stuff. And I go to my bakers, and they're like, that's about decoration. right? And it's nothing to do with baking or patisserie. It's adjacent, but it's not really who they are or who they think they are and what they're doing. And so we just haven't done it. When I find somebody who loves that bit, it's fine. But for me to go chase like some idea that, that's when you don't understand what a craft baker does. I mean, our kind of craft baker, is making bread, and dealing with fermentation, and it's just a different mindset.
You say the bakers are kings, which I love. I've met Roy.
Yeah.
Roy, actually saw him downstairs, who's an absolute legend. And
He is.
Obviously met him through Wilf, and actually met him when I used to work for Manny Life.
Love
pitched,
Manny Life.
amazing peanut butter. Obviously, you guys are a peanut-free site, so we didn't actually didn't actually get
I
anywhere.
have it at home all the time.
Yeah.
But there's a problem.
Yeah. But so why are bakers kings? First question, and then what do you think the pursuit of sourdough teaches us about like humanity, about life? Like I think you can from baking a gorgeous piece of sourdough and the other, you can learn lessons about life. What would you say those are?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think baking is a craft as we do it, right? It's not, and I'm trying to differentiate between the big factory-led, press a button and go, well, that's that supermarket bread that's not bread. But when you're trying to make, ferment anything, you have to have probably two things. I mean, one is you're going to invest a lot of time. So, you would never not buy the best ingredients because obviously you're going to invest that much time. You wouldn't, you wouldn't, you'd want the best kind of ingredients. And bless you. And you need, and it's this attention that all crafts people have, whether it's woodworking or it's, jewelry making, whatever. It's a craft that you need to pay attention to. I think these things teach us, patience and detail. These are things sorely missed. We live in a fast society. That's okay. That's good. That's, we've gone pretty far. I mean, society's, moved a lot. It's just that we got to remember some stuff it doesn't all go the same speed, and, our own brains need rest. And we need to think about how we play different gears. I mean, the best cars have plenty of gears.
Yeah, well, and also I suppose the sourdough. I mean, it's been around for a long time, but the people baking sourdough went through the roof during COVID.
Yeah,
and I think it's because that was the first time society was like, right, let's just actually slow down.
Yeah,
and I think we were forced by the world to slow down, and it's actually people like. And I think there is something just tactile about making something, and it forces you just to it's almost like. It's meditative, it's like slowing down and just getting you out, or getting into a different kind of flow, whether that's on a bloody skateboard or making a thing of bread. It's it's wild. There's a craft to leadership, I think. Yeah. And you said you sort of patience, slowing down, details.
Is this expertise, like growing expertise?
What would you say? I know Marta's amazing. She's sort of, I don't know how long she's been here actually, but. Yeah.
7, 8 years.
7, 8 years. What she taught you about the craft of leadership, do you think?
Yeah, I think, look, there's a lot of people. I'm a product person. Like for me, I buy into, if the whole world had to leave one thing, you'd want to focus on the product, right? And people will build their careers and their understanding of themselves and each other through the product, through this attempt to make an amazing product. Okay. I think there's another group, and it's not totally different, but you can look at the world a different way and say, look, let's get the people trained and in the right mindset and the right space so that they can do the product, right? And I think look, I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think you need to make a great product, you need people's brains and attitudes to come in, but what would you start with? It's a chicken and the egg thing, I think. How do you make a great product? Do you start with great people, or do you start with a focus on product and you start creating the people around that?
Did you guys do, the product or people?
Oh, I think we always built the business with Roy around product. We are just and that, but it's not what I invented. When I came in and I saw Gail with these 35 highly skilled bakers.
Yeah.
I just listen, I wanted to talk, right? But then I told myself to shut up, and just
that's a really interesting. That's the leadership nuance right there. Is don't shut up. Actually,
yeah, that's right. I'd say that's maybe the greatest lesson of leadership. Is like
shut the fuck up for a second.
No. And
what were you when you said like just shut up? Like what were you trying to soak in?
I can tell you when it happened. Right?
Okay, talk me through
that.
So
you think that like I went to business school, then I went to McKinsey, which is a consultant, and you're just taught to make, your job is to make sure as soon as somebody tells you the beginning of a problem, you set out structuring it and solving it for them, right? Helping them solve it. And there was a humanity part for me, which is just like, that's not fair. That's not right. So that's why we decided to help her for a year.
So you were at McKinsey at this point? Before.
In business school before that.
No, but when you met Gail originally?
When I met Gail, I was already at McKinsey. I was already living in London.
Yep.
Right? And I was kind of looking I'd been kind of 4 years there, and I was looking for something to do that was interesting.
Yeah. So the bakers, the bloke who's running it is punching the bakers. She's about to lose everything.
Yeah.
Talk me through that.
So it's my first month or two.
Yeah, talk me through the first month.
And
what does that look like?
We have some really amazing customers making amazing stuff. And I remember one chef called me and was like, "Hey Tom, I know it's a bit late. Can you double the number of potato rosemary sourdough you can do?" I said, "Well, how much you taking?" He's like, "Well, I'm taking, I think it's like 4 or 6 or something like that, right?"
Yeah.
So it's that number.
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's just no problem. Another sale, a happy chef." I'm kind of the business guy. I'm just getting my head around baking. I'm thinking this is like an obvious one, but I've got to go tell the guys. So I go down. I told the guys, can we, double that? And they're like, no way. I was like, are you kidding me? No, we can't because it's going to stress the mother dough, and I can't. I'm not going to take a risk with the mother dough.
Yeah.
And I was like, seriously? And he's like, yeah, absolutely seriously. And I was like, okay, you've been here longer than I have. So I go back to the chef, and instead of him going, I was expecting like him to yell at me, he's like, "Oh, that's cool. Totally respect that. What else could he do?" Oh, what do you? He's like, "Yeah, maybe you can spread that over a couple loaves. That would be great." And I went back and said, "Yeah, I can do that, but I just, I got to protect my mother dough. So basically, I have to protect my craft. I have to protect my ingredients. I can't just be shooting out volume. I need to be doing quality." Yeah. That's what the message was. And it also taught me I knew shit, right? I knew fuck all, right?
Yeah.
There's this chef and this baker, and they, and I'm this guy in between, but that made me understand I have a lot to learn.
It's gorgeous, and is there something about saying no, which is again probably another thing, which is, as you said earlier, like saying no is actually such a hard thing to do in business. Saying no to celebration cakes, saying no to potato and rosemary, sourdough.
Yeah.
But that, and I think it almost goes against the grain of sort of McKinsey or traditional business school, which is like, say yes to the customers, do whatever you can to make the customer happy. And actually, it's like, no, we've got this almost, the mother's kind of like a spiritual thing. Being like, no, fuck off, mate. Like, we haven't got it there. And I think there's a real wonderful lesson in that in terms of saying no. And the amount of people who I speak to listen to this, who I see, but it's like, it's always the hardest thing, and it's the same with me with this podcast, is saying no to opportunities that are just actually distractions.
Yes.
Distractions masquerade as opportunities, I think. It's just actually saying no.
But black belt business business, like say business at a high level, like, it is, they would say, listen first, act second. So it's kind of how you take it, right? So, I don't want to say like all those principles need to be thrown out. It's just that we have sometimes gotten into shortcuts, right? Where people are saying, yeah, business, because it is, business, if you're like business if you haven't really thought about business too much, then you're just yes, grow, yes, grow, mm-hmm. right? But if you talk to people, older people thought a lot about like what is business? Business is just delivering solutions to people, and the best solutions, should have some long-term resilience to it, So
best solutions should have some long-term resilience.
If you're doing like business is solving something for the long term. Right, I think it's got to be, you should be able, I think the best business basically is going to change something, and for the better, that people keep on wanting for a long time. It's not the short term. I'm gonna, extract this. I don't think it's the best business at its best is sustainable. It's not extractive, right? It builds on itself and it solves problems that in a way that's sustainable and self-perpetuating.
Yes. Let's swim into the waters of sustainability and the future of food. I've had Henry Dimbleby on this podcast who wrote Ravenous.
Yes, great book.
Wonderful book.
Yeah.
And I think his ability to sort of take a really complex issue and just sort of show how you've got to attack it from all different angles is beautiful. But you guys are getting bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of like number of sites opening.
Number of people employed. Amount of flour bought.
And there's this really interesting, it's quite a big idea that Seth Godin taught me, which is he's got a book that's just come out about strategy, and he's again thinking about exactly what you're saying, Tom, in terms of like planting a seed now for the future, which isn't just next week. It's not, it's in 30 years time.
Yep.
And he's got this idea of the circle of us versus the circle of now. So the circle of now is basically trying to think about tomorrow, extracting as much profit as possible.
Yep.
The circle of us is basically most people think about just their team and not the bigger country or the bigger planet.
Yep.
And he says our goal, or what he wants to impart on the world now, as he's more experienced, is we have to increase our circle of now, i.e. our time frame, and increase our circle of us, i.e. not just the people in Gail's, the future of food, the soil, the people who are going to be around here after we're gone.
Yeah.
I know sustainability's on your you went to bloody soil.
I managed to get my teenage kids to a soil exhibition at Somerset House, which was fun and they loved it. But
there's probably a sales lesson in there, mate.
Convincing teenagers to do that on a Saturday night was
that deserves a medal. But yeah, so how, as you're getting bigger, how do you wrestle with the idea of Gail's becoming and having to hit sort of the neoliberal goals of growing a business profitably, and like how does this thing exist way after you're gone?
Yeah. Well, look, we've always had like this sense of purpose, and at the beginning it really was like make great bread, at a bigger scale, from a really small 35 people to how can you get it to 70? Can it be to 100? We were doing maybe less than 1,000 loaves a day, by hand before. Now we're doing it, we can do 40,000 loaves, a day, and if you ask Gail, she says it's better than it ever was, and it needs to get better. If 20 years ago you were making something like that, you should be making it better, and we are. So I think that we've always had a sense of purpose, and as we get bigger, we have to keep on widening that sense of purpose. So keep on moving. It's almost like moving the goalpost, or just saying, look, now you are capable of doing something bigger. Okay, what is your purpose now? And our purpose now, we think that we're growing at a rate and we're at a size where we can start to help, improve the food system, which we think is, we've been in it enough and we see enough broken parts. We say, we have the ability to start fixing that, to play a part in healing and fixing the food system. And that's re-energized us quite a lot. And that's led us down to, how much regenerative flour can we buy?
Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but I asked some really dumb questions. Yeah. But what is, for just to imagine I'm a 3-year-old, what is regenerative flour? Because I know.
Yeah, good. Great. Oh, it's a great question, because a lot of people will use it. I mean, basically what you're trying to do is to grow something and leave the soil after you've grown that thing in the same or better state.
Right.
Okay, because right now we've approached agriculture like we approach fossil fuels a little bit. So we just say the soil is super rich with carbon, and it's got a life of its own. And then you just say, I am going to extract as much I can get out of that soil. And if you do that over decades or even years, and you start to use high inputs, monocultures, you kill the nature that built that, and you're left with a desert.
Right.
Of soil.
Yeah.
Right. You've toxified the soil. You've taken the nutrients out of it. You imbalanced the whole system. Nothing can live in the soil anymore, and you just have to move on. And that's just not the way to do it. And this is stuff that in the last 10 decades, with soil science has just taken off. And I would say I always credit the hippies of the '60s and Gail, food pioneers, for holding on to some of these principles that they didn't know why, but they were like, it just doesn't make sense. And I studied aquatic ecology at school. And
Wait, what's that? So
aquatic ecology. So it's like it's the study of kind of water systems and how water systems kind of how they work together.
It's so interesting how your thing is flow and like the water.
Yeah, that's true.
so
actually,
interesting,
yeah. Well, I grew up in the mangrove swamps in Florida, so I'm kind of that's where I grew up. Like just walking around those things.
Wait, so what's did you say mango?
Mangroves.
What's that like?
Well, mangroves is basically it's a wild forest that's kind of it's like on. It's in the water. Your mangroves basically crawl out into really shallow water, build islands. A lot of the coast of Florida, a lot of the coast of the Yucatan, the Caribbean, and West Africa is full of mangroves. And India,
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful ecosystem that's very rich. And it's super shallow, and these are the dominant trees there.
Yeah.
But it just gives you a chance to walk around in the mud, basically,
yeah.
my whole childhood.
Yes.
And spending nights out there and days out there chasing fish with spears. So, I feel like I did grow up outside, and I grew up in nature. And Carolyn Steele has a great book called Sitopia, which says Sitopia. Sitopia by Carolyn Steele, and she's I think she's a great.
What does Sitopia mean?
I forgot what the Sitopia.
Is it linked to dystopia and utopia?
No, it's about a nature-based kind of a way of living or place. But what she talks about, her main message in Sitopia is that if we could solve a lot of the problems of the world if we just get back in sync with nature. A little bit, back in the flow.
Yeah,
a little bit. It's like nature just teaches us so many things. If we just kind of adjust to that, we would have we'd have definitely a better food system. But she thinks a lot of things could be solved, and I think that's all about the patience and the flow, and knowing, listening before you act. It's just an imbalance, I think, that we have. It's not that we shouldn't be acting fast sometimes and moving ahead and being ambitious, but you also need to take time to stop, and that's also what training is these days, right? People say work really hard, then you need recover time. Like sleep time is part of your life. It's not a dead part of your life. It's an active part of your life that you need to have. And I think anyway. So just people talk about nature's given us what has developed this system over billions of years. So we should at least try to understand it and respect it before we go and radically change it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the answers lie in nature.
Yes, exactly.
Like there's most of the answers and the lessons are embedded in the thing that we're just in these, and actually cities, just if you actually zoom out, cities like what we're doing now, post industrial revolution, is like that on the spectrum of things. It's so new. Mm-hmm. Then you add in all these cameras and stuff. It's like no wonder we're all feeling a bit fucked at the minute, because it's so new in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So you said regenerative.
Back to regenerative, yeah.
No, but as in, so these principles, and I say ultimately what you're saying is, Tom, is you're expanding your circle of what you're trying to do with Gail is expand your circle of us who we can look after, and our circle of now is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
What are the seeds on the decisions we're going to make today that are going to help us in 2065, for example?
Yeah.
So regenerative farming is one, and and soil.
Yeah.
What are some of the other things you can do?
Well, I mean, some of it is I think the small businesses, some of the small innovative businesses, they don't even have to be small. They can be medium sized. We tend not to deal with really big businesses, but we're trying to. There's always some really interesting producers, that are out there. So like the guys that do that tea together, we do our jam with. Mary Quick and her cheese, the Lincolnshire Poacher guys. All these guys are like they're kind of growing businesses that they've been really successful by making amazing products. And usually they're what they can do is build a business serving chefs, and that's where it stops. But we're a chef-led business. That's how we started, right? Serving bread to chefs, and we know these guys, and we're like, well, why can't we take that that incredible focus on quality and put it into some of our products, use that as our base, our ingredients base. And, and so we're, I think the really one of the fun things you could do is that you can start to create, help if these guys want to grow and can grow and can do the same product, to help them get there, so you create like a wider base of for their demand for their ingredients.
So yes, circle of us, circle of now. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, to get the best bakers, right, and to have the best people, they do want to have more than just like a job to do every day. You want to have a purpose, to get involved in. You want to have a bigger thing to do than just your daily job. I find the most talented people want to know, not just what do I have to do tomorrow and this week to get a raise. But they also want to know, what am I doing this month that's gonna be interesting and that I can be proud of.
It's fast. So I was speaking to Joanna before we hit record about how you kind of install the bigger mission, i.e. the circle of us, circle of now, expanding both of those to the team. Mm-hmm. And Joanna was saying, I may need to cut this out, but just for our conversation, is that they're thinking about doing an internal podcast, yes. and that's actually a way to get galvanize the culture as you're much bigger. People are way more likely to listen to a sick conversation of like, this is where we're trying to go, this is how we're trying to expand things.
That's right.
And I think even that little thing is just a beautiful way of like, I've been very bullish about, I think, innovative companies, instead of having the kind of inane meetings where people get bored, is they'll do like 10-minute podcasts. And they'll people can listen to it on a walk or as they're going waiting for the tube. Yes. I think it's a different way of communicating, but it links to that kind of innovating and but pushing out how you get people bought into that bigger thing.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
The ecology, what was the degree you did?
Oh, my aquatic ecology degree. Yeah.
So what are the weird things, like weird lessons you took from that you think have? I know we've talked about flow. Yeah. That you probably still use today.
It's funny how some people ask, well, how the hell could you be doing this when you study aquatic ecology? But life is long, and what I learn and what I practice every day is like it's the interaction of things. Basically, ecology is a complex system. Complex system. And I just think, gosh, that's exactly, a group of people, a community, a business, whatever, has got that, and every ecosystem, ecological system kind of has, it's of that place, and it's managed to build this huge complexity, which doesn't stand still, changes all the time, right? But it's mastered its environment. And I always think that's what I want us to do. It'll never be an end, right? But can we master this, this craft baking and just provide a great example of how one way to thrive, and be true and authentic in the food industry. That's what I'd like us to be in the end, is this great example for a bunch of people to say, hey, in the food, and so you don't have to heavily market, you can focus on ingredients and on people and on craft. And yes, it costs a little bit more, but you're delivering something of incredible value. And I want to be an example where people go, it can be done. Mm. It can be done. If it can be done in baking, it can be done in lots of things. And fish farming needs to get better. Fish farming it's a great idea, but it became overly focused on by engineers and business people trying to increase yields and not thinking about what the implications of those things were, right? So it's become a lot of the fish farming, the worst of the fish farming becomes really detrimental to the environment, right? Rather than just a small part of it.
Yes. And then you said with the complex systems, ecology. I'm very bad at pronouncing. Is this interacting of things, and it never stops. There's no end point.
Nope.
And I love that's what a business is ultimately.
Yeah.
It's like an organism, and it's lots of different things colliding. What have you learned about trying to get those things into some sort of flow movement, like over? Because it's been 40 years since you've been doing this.
Yeah. I think it's
as you're getting bigger. I think is the main. I think it's easy when you're small. But when you're bigger, it's...
Yeah, I think every stage has its challenges. So, it doesn't... Some things get harder as you get bigger, and some things get easier. And when you're small, you have their own challenges. But I don't know, what do I think is like, you need to... You need to create some structure and process when you're a little bit bigger, right? And as you do that, you don't want to kill the risk taking, the fun, You don't want it to become a checkbook, or turn off the brain because I've got to do 10 things today. I got them done. Rather than why am I doing this? How can I be doing it better? You just
Yes.
You need to have structure and process, but you need to make sure that it's there's still enough curiosity in the business, and risk taking to make it fun and forward facing. Otherwise, you're just replicating some of the same stuff, right? And so I guess my job, and I always like to keep a really strong creative team. And but I don't believe they are the ones that deliver the creativity. Creativity has to be across all the business, just like I think sustainability has to be across all the business. I don't have like a sustainability team. It has to be living in every single person here.
Yes.
We have a creative studio, but I don't expect all the creativity to come from that. That's a certain kind of creativity where we're trying to connect to things.
Describe, because I love what you said. I believe curiosity is the birthplace of creativity.
Yeah.
So if you get people think, we'll do a bloody brainstorming session. It's like, if you haven't got curious people in the room, then it's just like, it's pointless. It's fucking pointless. It's like, I'm going to do a brainstorming session, mate. And it's like, no, what you need is go upstream, hire very curious people. Yeah. Very curious people, when they collide, back to this sort of ecosystem, ideas just bounce around. Yeah. But I love what you said, there's different types of creativity. Yeah. So it's almost like, you may have the creative unit downstairs, which is probably people like Roy.
Right.
Describe how that sort of goes into a flow and how you sort of stoke that. Yep. But then what I'm also interested in seeing sort of the juxtaposition of this is creativity and sustainability from other areas. Yeah.
So the creative studio does a great. So I think you start with really good creative people to start with. Like you need to make sure you've got some of the best. They're already really interesting, and I think there's two reasons why. One, they usually have a network of people that are also creative, right? So we do a lot of bringing people in and saying, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? We're trying to get this done. What do you think? Sometimes we'll make a bunch of salads together, or we'll do something like this. So it's using outside people. And I think, and then you need to kind of go through all those ideas, and that's why you need really smart guys inside, or at least to understand what you're trying to do, because there's probably 20 great ideas. It says you have 20 ideas, let's say 10 are great and then 5 are appropriate for us. Right. And and I need a team that can kind of sort through all that. But that's thinking about our food and some of the ways we deliver it and these kind of things. So that they really focus on that part of the business. The creativity that has to sit in the rest of the business and embedded everywhere is like, as people waking up, like if you're, building a site, a new Gail's, you say, how could I be doing it differently today? Or you can look at the scale of, I built this one Gail's, and I know why I did it, and then I did this mistake, and I'm going to change what I'm going to do for the next one to make it better. Or even every week in the building of that first one, you're going, what could I tweak? What did they miss that I can add, right?
Oi, oi, I am delighted to announce that the most banging kebab on planet Earth has just joined Uber Eats. Bababoom. It's banging. It's literally vavavoom for your taste buds. I smash the sweet potato hummus on the reg. The chicken kebabs are insane. I go to the one in Battersea Rise a lot. Loads of my mates live in Clapham, so smash it all the time. And they've also got one out east in Stratford. And look, don't say I don't treat ya. If you use the code BOOMDAN40, you're going to get 40% off when you spend 20 quid or more. So yeah, please do that if you want some banging kebabs. And if you're a restaurant who's looking for an amazing delivery partner, then hit me up. Our partnership with Uber Eats, we can do some sick things behind the scenes. So please reach out. Thank you so much.
There's a guy, do you know Hyatt Denham? I'll send you a link to it.
Okay.
Basically a guy who's built Howie's skate. I think Howie's a skate brand.
Okay, yeah.
Sold it to Timberland. Made a load of money, and was like, I want to start this new thing, which is jeans. And he's going to grow slowly. It's about sort of slowing down, super sustainable. Based in Wales. David Hyatt, been on the podcast, absolute sort of brand building legend. Cool. And he said he's got a wonderful quote, which is "Scale kills magic." And one of the things I think you guys have done incredibly well, I'd love to kind of get into the weeds of this. Yeah. Is you've managed to keep, so for example, and this is not me sort of lambasting Five Guys, but Five Guys is just like, you rinse and repeat, you know what you're getting. Yeah. And they're amazing burgers, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But then what I think with you guys is I go to the Isha store or the Cobham store, which is my local ones, and they're totally different stores. Yeah. The one in Camden downstairs, completely different. Right. What is first part of the question, what's the blueprint? So you go in, you know, this is going to work. And then what is I love what you said earlier, like we need to get the bakers right, but then we'll let them play jazz. And almost the nuance between different areas is the jazz, is the playing the jazz. Like talk me through that, 'cause I think that's interesting.
Well, I always thought that like, architecture and property drove a lot of my decisions early on. It's like, if I loved the site, I'd say, it doesn't matter about the neighborhood. Really,
Is there an example of that?
Well, like Hampstead, I was just like, I don't know, why did you go to Hampstead? It's like there was nothing there. There were already, it's like a few bakeries, or there were 2 bakeries there. But I loved the corner site, right? So I did that. Then at Notting Hill, we were only going to do one, but I fell in love with the Notting Hill Portobello one. I knew the guy. It was an art. It was something before, and then it was an art thing. But he was failing. But it was such a cool building on the corner. I was like, oh shit! Something needs to happen in this space. And so I fell in love with the property and said, okay, well, we'll make something fun out of this beautiful property. So I do love, buildings, and I think, gosh, in London there's just so many full of character buildings, right? So I think that's one thing. Is like sometimes we just start with the building, not the neighborhood. As we get bigger, we kind of think, okay, it's a neighborhood, and can we find a nice building in there? And we always like the challenge.
So did you look at the neighborhood, like how? Because you're opening, I think I read somewhere 3 to 4. I don't know how many. There's a lot more sites basically.
Yeah, we did like over 30 last year.
Like what's the process to saying, right, we think this is going to work, or this?
Yeah, it's a good look. It's kind of half math and half art, because I mean, you can do some. We've got some algorithms that I've built with some guys, which is a creative process. It's kind of saying
what's what we said at the beginning. Science and art are the same thing.
Same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I want to put science into it, right? Because I want to free my mind in the space to really think about the place.
What are those algorithms?
So those algorithms, we built it. I mean, it's probably 8 years we've been building it. It's like, why would somebody want a bakery in every neighborhood? And basically, we end up with an algorithm that can tell you kind of every postcode in the country what we might be able to do there based on what we've done. Now, it's just math, right? So you still have to get your head into that neighborhood, ask some questions, feel it, get, what side of the street, is it a building you love? Is it this kind of thing? But, I get half of it to be science. And that was a creative process. It's like, why would somebody be there? Well, maybe it's a little bit about schools, right? And it's a little bit about,
schools as in like actual
yeah. I mean, how many schools are around there?
Yeah.
How many churches are around there? Like, how far are you from the tube? But what I find is that our sites are, Gail's can exist. One can exist because there's lots of people around near a tube, and wealthy, right? And then one can do really well because it's, it's basically in a community that they don't have much, and they have to drive somewhere else, and there's not much footfall, and I don't know, it could be one school or something. And
when you say the maths of the algorithm, like just swim into those lanes a bit more, please,
yeah.
Tom.
Well, it's been developed over a couple of years. I did it with a friend of mine, my son's. He was a data scientist. Now he's our chief technology officer, and we started working on this thing, trying to answer the question like, what does make a good place? And we realized that it's just not like if it's wealthy it works, or if it's high footfall it works, or it's near a tube it works. It's not a correlation, right? It's a complex, set of inputs. And one input could be at 100, and one could be at 20, but then and then another one could be at 30, and then another site, those 3 inputs could be at different measurements.
What are some of the inputs?
Yeah, well, we would have like we have this thing called like retail density. I look at like how many sites are there, and how many would be associated, which I would call kind of nice brands, and how many disassociated. Right, so
disassociated would be like cafes there. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, we do a thing on competition, the competitive competitive landscape. But the impact of competitive landscape is actually pretty small. But you kind of want to know that there is something there. There is competition, right? That's kind of what we found, is that we want to go to a place that is competitive. So you look at competitive landscape, you look at the footfall, you look at the access to transport. You look at the spend that people have available to them, so demographics, and we've put them into a model that kind of learns on its own about like, okay, so every new site I have, I put in there,
wow.
And we say, okay, what did we do, and it feeds the model. right? So we can.
It's all AI as well. Or,
Yeah, now it's becoming. I mean, AI is basically now it's more advanced, but it's the same kind of thinking, where you just keep on feeding a model, and the model can tell you, hey, I think you should be. You might look at this area, or I think that this might work. And then that at least just gets us that beginning, and we can say, hey, okay, let's use the science. Now we need to use our brain. That's 50% of the answer. Now let's go to that neighborhood if we don't know it. Let's say,
Yeah.
and you start asking questions.
And that's the art.
About what, and that's the art.
Yes.
Yeah, and one without the other is like making art without any science in this case
Also,
is really time consuming. It doesn't let you refine stuff. It makes you're doing a lot of brute force work. Whereas what the math does is says, like, I can go through tons of data, and tell me what you think's important, and I'll tell you what kind of matches that, and then we say, okay, good, identify places that we might work, and then we go out and ask ourselves, will it?
What we said right at the beginning about art and science being two sides of the same coin, and what you're saying with this algorithm is a piece of art, really. And I think if you actually look at it, take a step back, coding, and I write a lot, I write pretty much every day.
Yep.
Writing and coding is basically the same thing. You're whether someone's taking a word out and then re-putting a word in, and then you create this thing. Whether that's a book or an art piece of art, coding, you're taking bits out, taking bits in, putting, and then it creates some sort of app or whatever. But it is the same thing, and I love what you've created this sort of this algorithm. Then as we swim to sort of from coding here to say the art stuff, how are you making people fall in love with the brand and making it feel like kind of unique to that place? What was the place you went to? And I think you spelt the name wrong and you gave out free tea or something like that.
Well, I remember Neo Bankside, we gave out free bread for like 4 days because I just wanted everybody to try it.
Yes.
What I found is that people would go in line. We were spending more time serving people on bread than we did anything else. But we still do that. We still basically go into a community and say, hey, look, we're here, and we say have a loaf of bread because that's what we do. And just enjoy it on us. It's a gift.
It's a gift. And then what about the actual physical stores and making them?
Well, everyone is designed by us, and me and Roy are still we go through the process. We bespoke each one. About what's the design, what's the look. We start out with our process is basically first an algorithm a little bit, then we go looking around and we see one, and then when we go design the sites, it's always the first starting point is, what is this neighborhood about? And the architects all know that. And we say, this is like an old Georgian neighborhood. It basically got built back in, time. Over the time, this has kind of happened to it. Okay, so now we know what this community has gone through. When it was built, what it's gone through, what's the major stuff. And some of the stuff is that locals wouldn't even know. Like a cinema.
Is there an example of
Yeah, like in Bristol, we're doing one, and it's got one of the first cinema houses on one end, and some other beautiful building, like Roman building that has got an interesting history. And we try to combine both of those into the design of that, and then we talk about it. So you can almost like...
So you got cinema and Roman building.
Yeah. We just said, okay, how do we use those two things that are in its past, to create something today,
Wow,
and we always start with that. I don't know if I'm sure 95% maybe of people that are going to go to the scales won't get that, but it gives us a centering and also a center of humility. Like we basically just agree that. So when we first look at a site and decide like what is that place going to look like inside? Because we've decided now outside, like that's a cool neighborhood, that's a great location or building in that neighborhood. So we're kind of all set. So the first thing that we do is we go, what is this community, what's gone on here in the past, and what's going on today, and we talk about that, right? And we say, okay, actually this, and they always have amazing stories, whether it's some famous person that lived there, or like Epping Forest. We try to bring a little bit of the forest in. So, but we try to think about, what went on here in nature and people. And then we try to reflect that, and I think whether everybody gets that or not, I think it's a great place to start because it's a start. You basically start in a place of humility, right? Like I'm here. I'm going to do something in this building, and it needs to reflect the history and the past of this area. And I think it centers you. And you talk about like, how do you slow down? That's one of my humps, that I say, I'm not going to design a site until you tell me what went in this neighborhood and how are we going to reflect that in our new site.
It goes back to the lesson you said right at the beginning when you first met Gail, which is shut up and listen.
Yeah.
What are other humps? And I love the quote, which I'm like, you can often give advice, but I'm very bad. I'm not very good at taking my advice. But a quote I love is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Again, I don't adhere to it, but
it's a good saying.
yeah.
Lots of easy things to say. It's all hard to do.
Yeah.
I know.
But what you said, other speed bumps to slow you down. Like, what are other ones you have in place?
Definitely on food, we try. We're not trying to be to see what's going on and then copying it. We're never. I remember the cronuts thing happened, right?
Yes.
Of course, there's a bunch of people. Even in our business, but peripheral type is like, do cronuts, man. It's so hot. People are waiting in lines in New York. They're paying £10, $10 each for them. There's a secondary market. How cool. And just like, hey, guys, that's great. That's great for them. It's great for New York. It's super fun. It's excellent. And I saw a bunch of people then copy it in London, but that's just not us. It's like, so that's a break. It's just like, enjoy other people's success. Like, you can be inspired by it. And where does it take you? But, copying or, really close to copying it, it's just you need to be there. So that's a break. It's like, don't copy, invent.
Yeah. Any
don't
others?
Copy, invent. Gosh, you got me on. I have tons, but I'm trying to think of them offhand. I know when we, okay. One is when we think about like where we're going to take the business, like every year in our planning, right? We make sure that we're doing it not just kind of what are we going to do next year, but like what is this thing going to look like in 5 or 10 years, right? Because that gives you a whole different perspective. The next year can get wrapped up in like how many sites you're going to build, what's the sales, how many new products you're going to do, that kind of thing. Okay, but who do we want to be in 10 years?
Circle of now, circle of us.
I guess.
Bigger. Wow.
I guess.
And what are some of the learnings when you have that bigger, expansive view? Like, how does that change what you think about now?
Yeah, well, I think it. So the biggest one of the issues I said about being fast and slow and stuff, but it's also quality is difficult to measure. It's difficult to discuss, except amongst people who really know their stuff. But everybody, so you talk about things that are harder to measure, right? So short term, you can say like, I got to be work at 9 o'clock, but where am I going to be in 10 years on Tuesday? In 10 years when I'll be working, but what time will I show up to work? It's much fuzzier, right? And I need fuzziness because basically the world's full of kind of, science and art. So, facts and creative or innovation. And, those facts, you just have to fight this tide or, of it just being about facts and not about things that are harder to measure.
And when you say fuzzy's good, how?
Well, because I think that it's harder to judge, right? And ultimately we need a report card. I need to know how much money is in the bank so I can figure out how much money I spend, right? But I don't get there by counting it all. I need to have it counted. But we get there by doing something creative that's not fully measurable. It's a risk. It's an innovation, right? It's our efforts. And if we, I could never tell you, exactly what's going to happen. I can give you a bandwidth. I can say, hey, we're shooting for, X amount of sites to build tomorrow. Or like, we want to change we want to get our sausage rolls, let's make it 10, 20% improvement off of where it is, Okay, what is 10 to 20% improvement, and it's easy. This is where the food industry gets caught, because it's easy to say, I'm going to make it 15% cheaper, or I'm going to sell 10 or 15% more. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying, how do we make a sausage roll better? Right?
Wow.
And then, of course, people are going to go, well, how many more do you think we'll sell? And all that stuff, and like, I don't know, how good is it now? How much could we do now from where it is? Like we use free range pork. There's only 1% of the pork in this country that's free range at the level that we will accept.
Right.
I mean, Jesus, Yeah. So part of it, sometimes you realize, actually, we're doing something. Maybe we need to just talk about it a little bit more.
Yes.
Okay, and that's kind of, it just comes with the cost, right? But
it goes back to what we were saying earlier about, it's actually, I think a lot of businesses need a better, or leaders need a better, it's actually, the smart answer lies in the dumb question. It's actually about asking a better set of questions, which is, i.e., instead of how do we grow, it's like, how do we make a better sausage roll? And then the byproduct of that is growth.
Yes.
I interviewed the founder of Brewdog, James Watt, and he says he always writes down, I think, some of his questions. He almost has this, again, linking the art and the science, this big white sheet of paper, and he'll write down, he will sort of say, if I spend this $1, or sorry, dollar, if I spend this £1, how will I 10x my business versus a competitor, for example? That links back to just doing, competitive advantage is an inside job, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Another thing he does is he says, what are my 5 biggest problems in the business right now, and how do I run hard at them?
Yeah.
What would you say are some of your biggest challenges right
today?
Now? Yeah. And how are you going to sort of, what's your approach to, do you run at them hard? Do you sort of go into the creative flow?
Yeah. So what are the challenges now? I mean, it's no longer kind of real estate, which was a problem before. One persistent problem is just, continuing to attract the talent that you want to grow the business at the speed that you want. And that talent isn't just like expertise, but it's, they need to embrace the culture and be happy to be kind of at service to baking. Cost is a big issue right now, because we're kind of at 20, 25-year highs on lots of ingredients. And how much can that be passed along? That's a big, so there is a big cost element. Every time I watch TV and I see these people like pushing, like, I can sell a tomato for 10p, come to buy a 10p or 40p loaf of bread or something. I'm just like, can we stop talking about food like that?
Yeah.
So I think that leaves the challenge of communication. I think the food system does have to change. I think we're well positioned to help that to happen and to thrive in that environment. But we need to get the whole supply chains rethought a little bit. But that's going to be tough, because the major supermarkets have most of the supply chains. But it doesn't mean you can't have another one. Coffee has got an amazing supply chain that's been built over the last couple of decades, and grain needs to do the same at the same level. I think that's what hits me, the most.
The cost is interesting, and how you navigate that.
Yeah.
As you say about passing it on. Have you been to Barafina? The restaurant?
Yeah.
Barafina? Yeah.
Love them.
Yeah. Amazing. So I interviewed Sam, who's the owner of that, and Cliff Artist, absolute legend.
Yeah.
And he kind of, it was because he's sort of more they're brothers, and he's more the sort of the finance guy, and Eddie's the sort of the creative genius. Again, art, science, art. And he was basically saying, he said, he sort of talked me through the economics of a restaurant with saying, imagine something is £1.20, and then he basically went through, that's when you pay your rent, your things, and he goes, what most people do is what we do is we actually keep the ingredients, say it's 20p.
Yeah.
We will actually increase that.
Yeah.
When most people are cutting it back.
Yeah.
And then we'll try and find other ways to reduce it down.
Yeah.
Say like you've got £1 and your business is £1.
Yeah.
Like, as in what the value you're trying to create. Like, how do you navigate keeping quality versus making it so like not prohibitively expensive? Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is the cool thing, because there's a lot of the good food world, right, is not at scale, right? So what's interesting is if you can get that
When you say not the
good food. So I mean, it's a general term. But let's say people that are doing really good stuff. It's usually done at fairly small scale, right?
Okay, yeah.
If you can start to think like, that more people want that, and it's all driven by the customer, just like coffee. We could be living in a world we're just drinking styrofoam coffee. This is what I always tell everybody. But instead, we'll work, and that'd be 50p. Instead, we're living in a world of 4-pound coffee. Now, which world do you want to live in? Which world do you think?
Well, I like good coffee. So.
I know, and I think the world has voted that they like the coffee. You can't find styrofoam 50p coffee anymore, right? And I think the same thing should be thought of as food, but there's a whole ecosystem that has to grow up, and part of that is that when I look around and I look at the really great small producers or innovative producers that are medium size, I think, wow, if there's some scale there, you automatically go down on the price.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you just, instead of one truck with one box, you've got, a whole truck filled with, it's that kind of concept. You also bring in more talent into it so people can think a little bit harder. So like for some of our guys, it's like, actually, I could put robotics here that would save me, 10% on my cost, because really I just have one guy, spinning it, taking a cheese, 2 times a week and flipping it over.
Yep.
We just had the same thing in baking. There's a bit of like when you cut something, the initial cut, if you can find something that you can cut and you're doing enough of them and they can cut it without hurting it, then it's great. Have it cut, right? And put all that manpower and brain power that, even my bakers would say some of that stuff that we were doing, 15 years ago is dumb work, and we don't want to be doing dumb work. We want to be doing smart work.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is really quite important. So I think, if you take those small guys and we can put some scale, it gets some scale economics, then it'll become more readily available. And I think I see that in what we've done, right? You basically can get better and better ingredients. You have to jump ahead of it a little bit. You have to trust.
When you say jump ahead of it,
well, sometimes you just like, our flour. We're spending more on flour, not just because flour is higher overall globally, but because we're upgrading our flour wherever we can, wherever there's we're buying a bunch of heritage grains, doing a bunch as this stuff becomes available, and we're starting to talk to farmers about, hey, can you grow this? Do you want to grow this? And we know it's better for the soil, so we're starting to kind of work together and say, we'd like to change the thing from just saying, look, I need great flour. Mr. Miller, go find great flour, mill great flour for me, to saying, let's get the miller, the farmer, and the baker together. What does the farmer need to make sure that his land is healthy? And he says, well, I need to do these kind of things. And these are the kind of products I need to grow. And then we're like, okay, awesome. Now, the miller, how do we want it milled? And then the baker says, okay, fine, I'm gonna ask what the earth can give us, and then we make the best bread from that, rather than we just say we want to make the best bread. And that's partly because we as a society are redefining what bread is and food is. It's basically nutrient rich, not just calories. It tastes good, and it's good for you. Basically, that's what we're willing to pay for, and we should, because it's great for our bodies. No chemicals, nothing like that. So you go back and you say, I want that whole system to be healthy. So I'll be healthy. Like nobody will buy a soccer ball from, or judge it to be a good football, even if it's good physically, if it's made by, child labor in, Pakistan or somewhere.
Yes.
That's not a quality football, and it's not a quality loaf unless there's some thoughtfulness there. So this whole system has to be created. Okay, it doesn't exist. There's not a whole bunch of farmers that are sitting there doing amazing stuff and then just looking for a market. Unfortunately, it's not. But there is, I think. But we can change that whole thing.
Yeah,
it might take a decade or two, but you just start valuing the things that matter, like which is nutrients, good farming, sourcing, and then and you have bakers and not machines to start out with. Then you start to say, they can connect the whole thing. And you got it.
Yes.
Now we need to convince people about things, you know.
Well, and also I think what you said, the beautiful way of putting it, Tom, is like, do you actually want? Because people can kick off about the price going up. It's like, go on, mate. I know is it styrofoam coffee?
Yeah.
That's repugnant. Like,
Yes.
in a sort of throw that under a bus, but it is.
Yeah.
So I want a coffee that has multiple layers and sort of it's a fireworks of flavors. You sort of slurp it, you know.
Yeah.
How to get your challenger brand into more supermarkets and increase your current distribution in half the time. Range reviews are happening right now, right this millisecond. Sainsbury's, Waitrose, Tesco, Ocado, Co-op, all looking for new banging challenger brands. Don't miss this range review and have to wait another 6 months. It's long. Don't lose precious shelf space to your competitors. Don't let your buyer pick another brand just because you didn't have a Grand Slam deck. Northstar Category Management help you create banging supermarket pitch decks so good that buyers find it impossible to say no to. Challenger brands like Perfect 10, Trip, Bulb & Co, Dash, all love Northstar. Look, I am so confident in Northstar transforming your brand. We've got an exclusive Hungry offer. Your first month for free. Yes, free. Plus, we're going to give you a free 30-minute consultancy session to see how your brand is currently performing in category. Click the link in the show notes to book your consultancy session and thank me later.
I'd love to know what's one truth you believe that most people disagree with you on.
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think, you know, one thing that, like, I guess most people wouldn't believe, you know, but enough of us do believe that the best days of humanity could be in front of us and not behind us. That we possess kind of, you know, the skill and the will to, you know, like in 100 years to have of course, not a perfect society, but a better, more thoughtful society than we have today.
So you think most people think the bad stuff's coming ahead, and you think the good stuff's coming ahead?
Yeah, yeah. I think that, and maybe I think that business and business principles and people who are running, the entrepreneurs and the people behind, and the people that are, I mean, the regular people that are working every day, you know, in companies, right, will be a big catalyst to that. Of course, you need scientists, and you need politicians for policy, and you need some other things. But, you know, the big driver will be that people will invest their time, their life, their talent in things of purpose that are good for the world and good for society and good for nature and not bad for it.
There's the whole thing, Matt Ridley's got a thing about the Rational Optimist, which is good news travels slow, and bad news travels fast. And it's like, we're so obsessed right now. Like,
I love that.
And it's like, if you actually look at today,
yeah.
And there's another thing a guy taught me on the podcast called declinism, which is basically where we think, or exactly what you're saying, Tom, the good old days.
Yes.
It's basically, oh, we're all fucked now. Like, everything's going on, the world's fucked. It's like, actually, if you actually zoom out, like, mate, like, you know, 80 years ago, less than 80 years ago, I'm reading one of Churchill's books, which is less than 100 years ago. And it's like, mate, we were at fucking war. Do you know what I mean? It's like people were getting sent to war, and now we're kicking off because we haven't got 100 likes on Instagram.
Yes.
It's like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's like, and declinism, I think you're so right. It's like within this sort of sea of fast negativity, if you take a step back and slow down, as we were saying, you can see there's positive things ahead.
Yeah, if we can start thinking, like I told my son, he's like, what should I do? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what you do. And who knows? But, you basically, solve a problem that the world needs to be solved that will leave it better. And I tell you, you will get something, somebody's going to buy you a beer somewhere along the way if you do that, and you might even have a bit of money, you might even be famous, whatever. But that's what, don't worry about the job. Like, just think about what problem do you want to solve? And the world's full of like challenges, and we've created those challenges. So we should be able to undo them. And that's why I think, we know how we have to work and be on holiday. I just believe this changing gears. Like, when we, when we stay in first gear or fifth gear, whatever gear it is, or if we stay like, I'm just about like making sure nature's is healthy. Like when we get to monoculture-ish, okay? So monoculture is the death of of agriculture. When we get too monoculturish, we just start thinking just in one way, and we don't change gears, and we don't turn our heads and look, then we're in danger. And that's what we have to keep on practicing. It's back to your curiosity thing. It's back to being, I don't think everybody needs to be contemplative all the time. Sometimes I just want to laugh and have fun, and you want to just be silly.
What do you do to be silly and have fun?
Yeah, look, I love to be in the water, and I love to be with my kids in the water.
Whereabouts do you do that in London, Hampstead?
Well, my wife's Italian, so
nice.
we often go down to Italy, in Sardinia, in the summertime to do that. And I make sure I always have a few toys, like paddle boards. My son and I did 100.
You meant toys like a little toddler. Like,
no.
You got a little
toys.
Yeah,
like older. We used to be little
Batman
little things
figurine.
Like that. Yeah. It's doing weird things. Like my son and I did 100-kilometer paddleboard. Like it's a 2-day, 1 overnight paddleboard. In the U.S. Just like put a backpack on, get on a paddleboard, and see if we can do 100 kilometers in 2 days. It was cool. That's silly.
Yeah.
We didn't know what to eat. We had to stop along the way.
So where was this all around Italy?
Well, we did it in Florida. But we took regular trips, just kind of like just see the world from a different perspective, even if it's from a perspective of being hungry and thirsty and tired. It revives you. So. So that's why I just think that we just get stuck sometimes.
What does the water do for you?
Oh, I mean, it's,
You grew up in the marshes.
I grew up in the water, and I just think, it's a 3D world.
By that you mean?
You can swim, you can be upside down, sideways, you can float, you can swim, you can be active. It's just, and it's a world I'm not, I can enter and be a guest, but never a permanent resident.
Ooh. Yes, that's so good.
Yeah.
And also I think it's kind of one of those things that makes you very present to realize how small, like how that's been there. And I think we're literally sort of a fraction. Our life is like a little glimmering spark.
Yeah.
And then either side of it is just blackness.
Yes.
That water and that ocean is still going to be there.
Yeah.
Well, less things really go fucked up. And
that's right.
If a comet comes soaring into us right now.
Yeah, there's a great book called Ocean Machine, The Blue Machine, which just came out that I read over holidays. My son got it for me.
What, so Blue Machine?
Blue Machine, it's amazing. It just talks about the water dynamics. I mean, it's everything, the physics to the biology of the ocean.
Right.
Really amazing. It's just another example of like how fascinating all this is and how... how beautiful and how it's just becoming increasingly well known, like how things work, why they work, what's the impact. And then, that's all stuff that I think humans we can absorb and we can go, yes, okay, it's intricate and it's complex. Okay, we need to be careful about some of the decisions, but we can play in this world and have fun.
How important is that for longevity?
I think it's super important because being like, having some level of calmness, to laugh and to cry in your life and to have all the breadth of emotions. I just can't. I have to believe that enjoying all that or being witness to that and having that in your life it is a natural thing.
When was the last time you cried?
I cried like mad on a Friday night. This amazing movie about the first Army regiment of all African American women in World War II.
Yes.
And how just the fight, they had to be so good, and then they were just their resilience was amazing. So I was sitting in front of the TV. It was our Friday night movie with my kids. Saturday night was the soil thing. A lot of tears.
Yeah.
But just because of like, gosh.
What was it about it that stirred your soul?
It's not that they got, it was, kind of not tears of pain, but tears of like, I'm so glad you were resilient and you did that because it's based on a true story. And like these people exist and you just, I don't know, why do you cry when that happens? I don't know. That's really funny because I was so kind of like with them and I could feel their pain, but I also knew their pain was more joy because they were just like, I'm here.
What's been, I think, the deeper the wounds, the deeper the wisdom. I really believe like the biggest mistakes you've made provide the biggest wisdom.
Yeah.
Along this sort of 40, you've been doing this for a long time. What are some of the mistakes you've made that caused real deep sort of wounds, lacerations, scars that provided real wisdom that you could basically impart to people who are setting up a business or a brand?
I think some of the hardest times I've had is having to tell people that it wasn't working, and they knew that, and I think, setting people free sometimes. I mean, talented people, but they just, it wasn't the right time for them to exhibit their skills. I found that really hard because I have so much hope. Some of them I have so much hope for. Say you will do great things, but just not here now.
How do you navigate that conversation?
Oh, terribly.
Yeah.
Just like,
what do you do
I guess
before?
with truth. I mean, with truth.
Yeah.
But then, it's not easy to do. And you do worry about the person, where they're going to, what's between the time that I tell them that it's not going to work here, but and then they find the thing, how much pain is there? So when I say it's not going to work here, right, and them finding the next thing, how much pain do they have to endure?
Sure.
And I'm, I think I have a hard time living with that. So that's given me a lot of humility around people, but also, I don't know, it's a weird thing. Like one hand, like just a lot more sympathy than I probably ever would have, having to do that and look in somebody's eyes and say, hey, this is not it, or being the decision maker that says that, hey, this is not going to work out. You feel the pain.
What other wounds are there?
I've been trying to be really careful, like to make sure that, business relationships, stay healthy, and, but occasionally you get, one or two, relationships that don't go well, and it's, and I don't know why sometimes those things that maybe that involve business or money, sometimes they take a life of their own. They just the toxicity sometimes. I think business can be really effective, but sometimes it can be toxic. But it's probably like everything,
Oh, yeah.
But I think it tends to be so. Sometimes that could happen. I don't know. I guess the big lesson I've learned is that there's a lot to do in this world. To be honest, there's a lot of things to change, and we all need to use our brains and our energy, to live great lives. But I think included in that living a great life is being part of something that you feel proud of. And I think that people are built to do that. That's part of the happiness of a full life, is to be actively engaged and to be challenged. And it's not just to be all easy. It's for it to be hard sometimes.
God, if it's not hard, there's no fulfillment.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah, I think it's tricky, isn't it? It's I think the harder something is, and the harder, you can almost feel like, and I mean this in like a very positive way. Like you can feel not pain, but the labor of love is a better way to frame it. When you try on your sourdough loaves,
but when you're in it, that's what I'm trying to remind some people. Okay, sometimes people are like, "Shit, I haven't slept for a couple of days. I'm all stressed out because this. I'm trying to figure this thing out, and I just haven't gotten it, and I don't think there's an answer." And we push ourselves to that level here, and I think that in the middle of that, trying to remind somebody of that is. What's difficult, and they've some people see that and they're afraid to get into that, and I'm just like, I'm really trying to encourage people to do it, feel it.
When you say as almost run into the hard problem.
Yeah, run into hard problems.
Because this again, same thing with Rich and I, right? We're trying to everything else. We've got everything flowing with this podcast. We can't get these clips. We're putting our fucking air out trying to get these clips. It's not even a big thing. It's just I feel like if these clips on YouTube to really. And we're trying everything. We've just go, test, iterate. like, and I'm going insane about it.
Yes,
But I'm like, I just need to go and like, I'm trying to do dry January now, and it's fucking boring. And I'm actually thinking I might go for a pint in Camden after this, right? Because I'm just like, you know. But anyway, so, and I think again another common thing, you know, from all the guests is run at hard.
Yeah.
What is your sort of approach to run at hard, but in a sort of flowy, be like water way? Because I think there's nuance there.
Yeah, we have this concept like called joy, you know, which is like, and that's different than being happy. You know, it's like
it's different. Like, joy is different from happy.
Yeah, because joy is like you know, what's going to fulfill you, right? And I think what you're trying to do is you know, I think you have to paint it not as like a, you know, you know, again, not in a. We try to talk about challenges as opportunities, but you don't want to get too prescriptive about that because some things are just fucking challenges, you know? Okay, yes, it can be an opportunity. You don't want to get too bookish about that whole crap. Then that's a bit, you get lost. But I think it's, you know, I would say, you know, yeah, that, you know, just think of the joy of like, of the teamwork and some of the other stuff that comes with it. I mean, you know, so your parents will never want you to do this stuff sometimes, you know, that they want you just to have like this, you know, this calm life where you get, you know, good sleep and you get that done and you move ahead and and all this stuff. But, you know, to do all that, you know, you need to know, you need to push your boundaries and you need to care about something so much that you can't sleep at night. You know, I do think that's part of it. And I guess, you know, my job maybe sometimes is telling people that, you know, give it a shot and see how you feel afterwards.
Yes.
Don't worry. We need this problem solved. So I'm pushing for the problem to be solved. You know, don't give up and, you know, go back to the drawing board. A lot of times we design sites even, you know, we're just like, okay, guys, you know, we've got to push it further. We have to push it further. This isn't enough. And, you know,
and how do you?
And my creative guys do that really well because they're never satisfied.
Oh god, yeah. But that's like never satisfied in business is great, but when that spills over to personal life, it's like you're constantly looking at problems. Like for example, like the clips thing. If you were to tell me what I'm doing with the podcast now in terms of like getting amazing guests and the way everything's running, the science behind the scenes with the rituals. Mm-hmm. If you had told me this is going to be happening in 4 years' time, I'd have been like, oh my God, I'm going to feel amazing. And I think Giles Brooks said to me, who's been on the podcast, it doesn't get easier, it just gets different. Your hard just gets different. So now I'm just looking at you're almost just finding the next problem to put in. Yeah. Like, how's your level of hard changed? Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, that's why we keep on redefining our purpose. You know, it was just trying to get stuff to scale. And I told people, you know, and then it was trying to make bread accessible. And now it's like trying to change the food system. And I told you guys, I'm already thinking about like our next challenge is going to be like, you know, how do we make sure that we're like this incredible example, you know, to as many societies as we can about how a food system can grow and be successful and do the right thing and be profitable and do all the things. And how can they do that without spending tons of money on marketing, but rather spending it on the ingredients and the people who are making the food?
Yeah.
You know, and how do we, you know, a food-led business in a food industry? It makes complete sense to me. But that's not, the successful models have been marketing-led food businesses.
Yes.
Not product-led food businesses.
What do you think of the food system in the States? Like not even just I'm just from my own experience. Like I was in Miami, got stuck in Miami airport for a night last year. Like missed my flight on the way to Colombia, and obviously I've been to New York. I mean the airports are so crazy over there. Like but like the food, like the drinks are much bigger. How again you've been in both countries. Like how's the food system there different and like versus the challenges versus ourselves?
Yeah, so I took like a 2.5 week tour with my head baker to meet a bunch of bakers and scientists and on the West Coast. And we ended up at the Bread Lab in Seattle where they're doing all this. It's like the Harvard University of bread making.
Bread Lab, yeah?
It's called the Bread Lab. Yeah, and we've got a version of that down here in our hub here because, you know, you need a place to really do the science, right? And so we went to the University of Oregon, and then we worked with a bunch of bakers, and we saw the tartine guys, and met some guys in LA, did some surfing along the way, met some cool people, met some millers. And I think what they're doing there, because their system is so big and so focused on efficiency and price, that they've decided that, look, we're just going to build an alternative system. And so there's an alternative food system parallel to the big food system. Because changing the big food system is so big, they haven't been able to do it. And the new food, or the good, what I would call, maybe it's a shortcut, but say the good food movement is growing and has got some cash, especially in the West Coast. And, I see that in pockets in North Carolina. I see that pockets in Florida. I see that pockets in New York, Boston, Chicago. But the massive system is still the same. But there's a parallel system that's being built. It's not that efficient, but it's pretty pure play.
Yeah.
That, you've got the regenerative farms, the regenerative mills, and the bakers that do it. The problem is, what's the result? Is a $15 sourdough loaf. 12 pounds, man.
Yeah.
11, 12 pounds.
Yeah.
But, here, it's, 4 to 6 pounds for a sourdough, good sourdough loaf.
It's easier to do you think we've got better food here than we do on
the whole, yes. I mean, the U.S. is, gosh, like the U.S. with lots of things. It's kind of examples of some of the best in the world, best in class, and some of the poorest,
I think the
examples
floor,
of
the
things.
floor here is better. Like the
Well,
baseline here is better than the States.
Yeah, well, I'd say the average maybe is better here, but it's not a whole lot. I think it's, where you see a difference really is in Italy or France or Germany.
This is the other thing I think when I first.
I'm afraid we're too much here in the UK like the US,
Really?
but better.
So because I know you guys do these tours. Like, what other places have you been to and what other cultures or stuff have you got like you've sort of jumped into and you're like, wow, like this has totally changed the way we want to do things at Gail's, or the way you view the world about food?
Well, I think it's a lot of things. I think there's a lot of stuff going on in Spain. I think Italy's had the slow food movement for a while. Slow food movement. This is called slow food movement, and they slowed things down, and they have this regional food systems, and there's some national examples, but it's they have it. Germany's got a pretty good baking culture. Scandinavia's got their they've pushed foraging, and these are but there's a lot of stuff happening from different starting points. But Europe's kind of got a better starting point than the US. And unfortunately, the UK looks a little more like the US. But the cool thing about the UK is that it's a small enough market, right? Where, and the land is close enough to, some of the capital and everything in London. And it's quite easy to get around that I think things can happen faster here. And I think we could provide, a national example of a food system that heals itself faster than you could do in the States.
What have you thought about going to other countries?
I get asked all the time. For me, that right now the UK is like a super fascinating place. I love it, and I think there's more to do. But I don't know. It depends on who shows up on the door and says, "Hey, I want to do something cool," and I'd have to find a market where I thought it needed us, where we would be of some service or value to the society, because it's where the food system doesn't work, which is probably sounds like the US, but it could be other places.
I'd love to know, why is your best friend your best friend?
Because they're honest and loyal. Yeah, I won't say who it is.
Because you'll piss off the other friends.
Yeah. What's interesting is in my lifetime, there's two of my best friends have died. One of cancer and one of heart disease. And I always wonder how much that was lifestyle.
What, as in just?
I don't know. I've always hung out with crazy guys. And I think neither of them probably took proper care of themselves.
How would you say you're crazy? Because I'm certainly crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've never really, settled. I'm always feeling like there's, something, not else to do, but something to do. If you're doing something, that could even be better. I'm just, it's kind of crazy not to just totally relax, but I have found that I need to find my rest spaces and to do that. But I like to get in trouble sometimes. What the hell? Like I tell some guys around here sometimes. I mean, you don't want to hurt. No way you want to hurt anybody or leave any pain. But
what's your favorite bit?
But I want to break some rules. you know. I used to. What I love to do is to go out into water or nature. But mostly it's water for me, like in the middle of the night, and just like be. We used to go surfing at night. We used to go out in the mangroves at night when there's gators out there. It was just stupid shit.
Yeah.
You know, turn off the lights, like go out on a boat in the middle of time and just, you know.
How does it change your soul when you're in the water at night?
Look, I think it's, you probably should be scared, but I don't really feel that's, you know, because you're pretty vulnerable. But I don't know, it's a good, you know, I don't feel that scared when I'm out there.
I think what you said there, and this is something I totally relate to, is like the never satisfied or like constantly moving.
Yeah.
And it's like, it links to the thing you said right at the beginning, the flow. And it's like, that's where I actually get, I find sort of peace when I'm moving and doing things. Like the idea of just sort of sat there, like, I'm like, fuck this.
Yeah.
And I think that's, mate, I know you've got to go, so let's wrap this up. But
yeah.
Absolutely, thoroughly enjoyed that. And yeah, thank you. That was epic.
Cool, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, nice talking to you.
Right,